Oh, hey, there we go. There we go. We're live. Oh, I hope. Let's have a little look. Are we live? Let's double check via the phone because it's early. It's an early one. It is the earliest one. Yeah, we're live. Lovely stuff. God, couple of little technical issues, but we are there. Hello, Ace. Hello, Charlie. Up early for this one, or possibly just from somewhere where this race is in a slightly better time zone. Thank you, Mohammed, for subscribing. Appreciate that. Oh, right. Let's wake up. Let's get in the zone. Little sip of tea. Accidentally put 2 tea bags in this, so this could be this could be powerful. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. Oh, right. What are we feeling then coming into this Grand Prix weekend? Shall we talk the little bit of controversy that we've got coming into the Australian Grand Prix first and foremost? Let's talk Alex Albon and Logan Sargeant, shall we? Hello, lads in the chat. How are we doing? Not him. Love your content. Thank you so much, mate. Hi from America. Oh, I don't know. I forgot. America's back a little bit. Is this like a late night race for America? Little bit like Miami will be for me in a little bit. Lewis's position today, not looking amazing. Gonna be honest with you. Yeah, 9:30 at night. Lovely. Lovely little evening race for the Americans out there. I'd much prefer that, to be honest with you. Not an early morning person personally. 10 for you. Yeah, love that. So let's chat into it, shall we? What are our, the Americans in the chat are probably the perfect people to go to. How do we feel about Logan Sargeant in all of this? Obviously, it's a strange situation for Williams to be in. You know, it's not one that we see that often in modern day Formula One. Back in the day, so your 80s, your 90s, this was quite common where teams didn't quite have the equipment, the facilities, and the money to be able to bring spare chassis and spare cars to every single event. But nowadays, your Ferraris, your Mercedes, your McLarens, your Red Bulls, they're going to have a spare chassis or 2 at every single Grand Prix. So it's not really one that we see. But Alex Albon, free practice 1, turn 6, does it again. You know, we saw this last year from Alex Albon at basically the exact same part of the track where he smashed up a Williams car, caused that red flag that was then sort of one of the dominoes to cause 2 and then 3 red flags in the Australian Grand Prix last year. This was during free practice, but we saw the Williams take a heavy shunt in the wall. There was a lot of debris. I mean, you only had to look at the onboard from Lando Norris as well afterwards. Lando Norris was sort of driving through behind Alex Albon. There was a lot of debris on the track, sort of really slowed down. But Williams hadn't managed to get their spare chassis in order. I do think we did need to take into account where Williams were over the winter break. I think it's very easy to say they should just have one. Like, they should just have a spare chassis by now. But Williams had a lot of setbacks over the winter because they just, there's a really good video by The Race about the behind the scenes at Williams and basically what people were going into every single day at Williams compared to what James Vowles wants it to be in a couple of years' time. And over the winter break, just had a lot of problems, a lot of issues trying to put the car actually together. And therefore, they were just massively behind. Like, we didn't see the Williams launch in the way that they wanted it to. We didn't see a shakedown from them in any way. They were very rushed actually getting the car ready for Bahrain testing, let alone ready for the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix that we've had so far this season. So the fact that they managed to get 2 chassis put together for Bahrain was actually very impressive considering where they were. But it's been a few weeks since then. you'd imagine that the first thing on your list would be that spare chassis. You know that, especially with Saudi Arabia and Australia, the sort of, well, Saudi Arabia is a street track. Australia, kind of a hybrid street circuit. It is dedicated to Formula One, but also it is just a park a lot of the time during the year as well. So it's a bit of a kind of weird mix between racetrack and just road in Australia, right? But Williams at this point, Alex Albon is the driver that makes the mistake. Alex Albon is the driver whose car is broken, whose chassis gets destroyed. And then it puts Williams in a very difficult situation moving forwards. Puts James Vowles in a very difficult situation moving forwards. And, you know, if you think about his time as Williams' boss, he's had to make some pretty hefty decisions. He obviously came into a team, both drivers were already decided for him. So he hasn't had to make a driver decision as of yet. Well, he's had to make a decision as to whether keep his drivers, but he hasn't had to make a decision on actually hiring a driver as of yet, as James Vowles. He has had to make a few decisions about key team personnel. You know, he's brought in Pat Fry. He's brought in various people. Thank you, Seafield, for subscribing. He's brought in various people that he knows he wants to use moving forwards and have in the team for a little while. But this I would say is his biggest decision. Do you punish Alex Albon, who is, let's face it, the team's best opportunity at points? And Australia is one of the Grand Prix that I would say, if there is a chance for Williams to pick up points this season, there are maybe only 8 to 10 Grand Prix. I would really say that they have a real chance. And Australia is definitely one of them. So you're already looking at one of your very few opportunities slipping away from you if you haven't got Alex Albon in the car, in my opinion. But it was Alex Albon that smashed the car. And you're then looking at, do you punish Logan Sargeant, who has done nothing in all of this, really? You know, he's kept his car together. He's been very careful over the first few weekends, has made sure that he hasn't smashed up his Williams car like we did see from him a few times last year, but he's made sure that he's kept it on the track. And it's a real kind of, it's a real tricky decision in my case. I feel like, you know, you look at it from a sporting perspective and you just look at the fact, okay, if you only had one Williams car, like if for some reason a car didn't turn up at the track, they would put Alex Albon in the car, right? He is your better driver. He's your best opportunity at points. It makes sense to go for that as your decision. On the other side of things, if you look at where the team are, the likelihood of points realistically, and the fact that you have to tell one of your drivers to sit out, it maybe causes more headaches than it's worth. I think this personally points towards the fact that Logan Sargeant probably shouldn't be in that seat. And James Vowles, as much as he's been very positive about Logan, he's talked about how Logan has made steps forward over the winter break and is very positive about Logan Sargeant going forward with the team. I think it shows if there was a clear option to replace Logan Sargeant, which I don't think there was. I know a lot of people say Mick Schumacher, Frederick Vesti maybe, but I don't think there was a real obvious option to replace Logan Sargeant moving forwards that allowed the team to also look long term and think about how they could replace Alex Albon if that Alex Albon seat also now looks like might become available too. So they might end up with having to keep Logan Sargeant furthermore. But it does feel like Logan Sargeant is just kind of in that seat as a little bit of a placeholder for now. And maybe at the end of this season, where it does feel like there are going to be quite a few more options. You know, you look at the fact that Liam Lawson is still about, will be looking for a seat. They have that connection with Red Bull. That's how they got Alex Albon in the first place. And look how well that's gone for them. You've got Kimi Antonelli possibly coming through, Ollie Behrman. Maybe they make a connection with Ferrari and just start to build connections with all the big teams, right? You know, you've got that Mercedes connection between Williams and Mercedes because of the engine. You've then got the connection because of Alex Albon with Red Bull. Maybe you make a Behrman connection. You've then got a connection with Ferrari. And actually that put Williams in a really good situation where they can connect with all those different teams. And you can learn a lot, right, from those teams. And those connections, those partnerships do actually build massive amounts of information that you can build from. But yeah, Logan Sargent, for me, I think this says he is unlikely to keep that Williams seat come 2025. Make jokes about Logan, but only because I'm his uncle. Will buy him a seat at Haas. I feel like Logan Sargent... No, I do feel like Logan Sargent probably won't be back on the Formula One grid anytime soon. I'm going to be honest with you. I think there are so many good young talents coming through. I had this discussion with Taron from On Track on our podcast. And just the fact that over the last couple of years, you could kind of argue that there weren't that many real like incredible rookies coming through. I think other than Piastri, Porsche, you could probably argue as well. Apart from that, there hasn't been anyone like really grabbing the headlines and talked about as like a definite coming into Formula One. But with the kind of way that it's worked in the last few years, with Daniel Ricciardo's injury and Liam Lawson coming in, he's put himself in a situation where I think he's shown that in 5 Grand Prix, he was very, very good and very, very consistent. Given a whole season, could be able to do something. You're looking at Ollie Behrman last weekend in Saudi Arabia. The fact that he put in a very good performance in Saudi Arabia for the Ferrari team, I think, again, has put himself in a position where if he didn't deserve a Formula One seat because of his Haas performances, he definitely looks like he could deserve one now because of that Ferrari performance in an actual Grand Prix rather than just in free practices. I think Logan Sargent is under too much pressure, and there's too many really good young drivers coming through that do need an option, to the extent that you could argue Kevin Magnussen's under a lot of pressure. I think Ollie Behrman could go in there. You could argue Daniel Ricciardo's under a lot of pressure. Like all these drivers that are kind of in their 30s and just kind of hanging around Formula One and aren't likely to make a move forwards. Like if you look at Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, that kind of profile, are they likely to really move back to a Mercedes, move to a McLaren, move to, you know, one of the top teams once again? I don't think so. They're just kind of placeholder names that do put in moderately good performances. Like if you guarantee a 6 out of 10 every week, Valtteri Bottas is your man. Like he doesn't often grab the headlines, does Valtteri Bottas? Sargent is a legend. He scored 1 point last year. Yeah, that's very true. But the 1 point came in an American Grand Prix where 2 drivers were also disqualified. And I suppose you've got to put yourself there, right? You've got to finish in 12th place to then finish in 10th. But it was only 12th place, actually. Though 2 cars were illegal. So how you balance that out? I think if the Ferrari and Mercedes weren't illegal, they would have definitely finished ahead of the Williams still. I don't think the fact that they were slightly illegal made them finish in front of the Williams of Logan Sargent. Do I watch football? I do, although I can see that you're called London is Red, and you probably won't be very happy with who I support. So, if Ferrari wins, I'll get a buzz cut before summer. I feel like Ferrari in a pretty good position moving into this weekend. Let's move away from the Logan Sargent talking point discussion that we have, because Alex Albon is in the car, and if I'm honest, I kind of agree with Williams in that. I think I would have also put Alex Albon in the car personally. Looking at the standings, I feel like Ferrari are definitely that closest competitor to Red Bull. If there is going to be somebody who wins this Grand Prix other than Max Verstappen, and other than Sergio Perez, I guess you could say as well, it's Charles Leclerc. I know Charles Leclerc is third in the championship, and that's quite easy to say because he has had a couple of Grand Prix. I think you look at Carlos Sainz in sixth place, and you could argue that he's out of position. You know, would Carlos Sainz have picked up 3 points last weekend? Yes, because Ollie Behrman picked up 6, and Carlos Sainz is a much more established driver than Ollie Behrman, and definitely would have finished probably just behind Charles Leclerc. I feel like Carlos Sainz would have finished in 4th, whereas Ollie Behrman finished in 7th. So Carlos Sainz is slightly out of place there in 6th, and that just really stamps the fact that Ferrari are easily that closest competitor to the Red Bulls. George Russell, Oscar Piastri. I think it's interesting that Lando Norris is down in 8th place. I think Lando Norris will be much better this weekend because he's just looked a little bit uncomfortable still in that McLaren car. I mean, it's not massively his fault in that, you know, Bahrain in particular does not suit that McLaren car. Saudi Arabia also doesn't really suit the McLaren and what it's trying to do at its best, just in terms of like the tire degradation, the track itself. I think we're going to see the real McLaren pace in these next couple of races. The next couple of races here in Australia, Japan in a couple of weeks' time, does suit the McLaren's DNA a little bit better. And will suit their car much, much better too. We saw even towards the end of last year where Lando Norris was picking up constant podium finishes. It was constant podium finishes, asterisk, in tracks that suited the car. Like, it was very track dependent in terms of the McLaren's performance. And that is going to carry over into this year. We're still going to see the McLaren very track dependent. And Lando Norris is going to come alive in the next couple of races. So if you want a little bit of an outside shout, I feel like if it's not a Red Bull that's winning the Grand Prix, it's a Ferrari. Or if you want to, you know, add in a little shimmer of spice, maybe Lando Norris could get his first win in a McLaren. Although I feel like that's a little bit further away from happening than the Ferraris getting up to a possible win. Then you've got Lewis Hamilton in 9th place in the standings there. Only 2 points above Ollie Behrman. And Lewis Hamilton has had 2 Grand Prix to Ollie Behrman's 1. So it's not been a wonderful start to Lewis Hamilton's season. You've got the argument, you know, is he already kind of looking at that 2025 season? Is he already kind of lost with this Mercedes car, the third iteration of this new star Mercedes car? Has he already kind of given up a little bit? Have Mercedes realized that maybe they can use Lewis Hamilton to their advantage here, and they're just kind of putting him in a car with some very strange setup choices, possibly? We saw that in 2022, actually, didn't we? We saw Lewis Hamilton a lot of the time being the guinea pig in the Mercedes car and opting for various different setup choices during Grand Prix weekends to just try and see what the Mercedes was all about. I think we're basically seeing the same from Mercedes this season. We're seeing Lewis Hamilton given various different setup changes, bits of setup that maybe don't really work that effectively, but they're just kind of looking at, well, does it change this? Does it change that? And yeah, I feel like Lewis Hamilton is in a position where Mercedes are giving him a bit of a dub car. He's not really too bothered moving forwards because he knows he's going to Ferrari and is in a little bit of a no man's land this season. And we knew that coming into this season, right? If you're going to basically tell the entire Formula One grid that you're moving a year in advance, you're always going to put yourself in a bit of a strange situation for that season. Ollie Behrman, 6 points there. It'll be interesting to see how long that keeps him in 10th place. I feel like Lance Stroll is the most likely driver to obviously jump that 10th place and get back into the top half. But I feel like 6 points will actually keep Ollie Behrman in the top 10 for a considerable amount of time. Like, we could be looking at maybe 3 or 4 Grand Prix. Like 3 or 4 good Grand Prix from Lance Stroll before he actually jumps above Ollie Behrman. That's, you know, considering he pitches up 9th, 10th places, which you'd expect Lance Stroll to be picking up over the next few weekends, if like nothing crazy happens. And then Nico Hülkenberg, the likelihood of him jumping Ollie Behrman on 6 points, that could take a real long time. Like Nico Hülkenberg, as much as he was good value for that point in Saudi Arabia, there were some extenuating circumstances, shall we say, with Kevin Magnussen basically forcing that point for the team, and did an exceptional job to force that team, but still a forcing of the point nonetheless. Unpopular opinion, Milan is blue. I mean, yeah, Inter are pretty bloody good, aren't they? I think that's fair. Favorite driver, Lando Norris. I'm a McLaren boy though, so just once Lando moves on, if that ever happens, it'll be Oscar or whoever comes in. I'm a McLaren man. So glad Lewis did the reverse Alonso, moving team at the right time. I mean, he did that when he joined Mercedes, right? So, like, Lewis Hamilton has been very good at moving team at the right time, in that moving to Mercedes managed to pick him up another 6 world championships. So, I would argue that is a very good career decision from Lewis Hamilton. Whereas, yeah, you can argue Fernando Alonso never really been able to do that, has he? In that he's got those 2 world championships to his name, but that was 20 years ago now that Fernando Alonso picked up those championships. So it's been a little while for Fernando, whereas Lewis Hamilton definitely going the right direction. Can Leclerc or Sainz make pole? Charles Leclerc, definitely. Charles Leclerc should have got pole in Bahrain. Was quicker in Q2 than he was in Q3, which is very rare to see. Just couldn't quite hook up the lap as it got a little bit cooler, and as the racetrack kind of evolved, that touch just escaped Charles Leclerc a little bit. But yeah, definitely, Charles Leclerc is the best qualifier on the grid. I don't think that's, controversial to say. I don't think Max Verstappen is even in the top sort of. Well, man, yeah. I was going to say top 5, but he probably is in the top 5. I don't know if Max Verstappen's in the top 3 best qualifiers on the grid. I think if you gave everybody the exact same machinery, I don't think Max Verstappen qualifies in the top 3. But I do think he finishes in the top 3. I think Max Verstappen is clearly the best racing driver on the grid, not necessarily the best qualifier on the grid. I do think they are 2 separate things. And unfortunately for Charles Leclerc, that has meant that he's picked up a lot of pole positions in his career. Like, he's got a lot of Pirelli tyres in his Monaco apartment as Charles Leclerc, but not that many winners' trophies in comparison. And that's the way it is. Ooh. And then, well, we haven't touched upon the rest of the bottom half there, but we are getting towards the start of the Australian Grand Prix. So we will shift in a moment to the live feed. I can already see some AI radio messages coming through for Alex Albon, of all people. Ooh. But yeah, we haven't talked about the bottom half of the grid because it's just a bit of a weird thing at the moment, right? Alex Albon 13th, Joe, Magnussen, Ricardo, Ocon, Tsunoda, Sargent, Bottas, Gasly, 0 points. Again, could be a long time before a lot of those drivers pick up points. Like, it does feel like there's very much a top 10 drivers, bottom 10 drivers at this point in time. So it'd be very interesting. Is that a Lego Formula 1 car behind me? It is above my head. It is a Lego Formula 1 car. Thoughts on the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix track? I mean, if it ever happens, it looks phenomenal, as all the Formula 1 drivers have told us. It looks very, very good. But I feel like it's going to take a long time to really get there. And it will be interesting to see. Comment on the Logan Sargent situation. We actually started the stream by talking about it. So if you want my full detailed answer, just scroll back a little bit. I do think it's very harsh on Logan Sargent, but I do think Williams have made the correct choice. I do think that the Australian Grand Prix is one of their few opportunities to really be in and amongst the point scoring places. The Australian Grand Prix does suit the Williams car a little bit better. You look at even last year, Alex Albon was running in the points before he smashed up his car into the wall. Hopefully he doesn't do that again, because that'll be 3 cars he's ruined in Australia if he does that again in the Grand Prix. But I can understand their decision to put the best driver in the car on a weekend where points, James Vowles said it himself, if they can pick up 1, 2 points, that is huge this season, just because of the gap between the top 10 and the bottom 10, and the fact that realistically, the likelihood of Williams picking up points, I think there are like 8 to 10 weekends where Williams will be in contention for points. And when I say in contention, I mean they'll finish 10th, 11th, 12th. So they do need to get Alex Albon out there. And it's really, really harsh on Logan Sargeant. But Logan Sargeant has now had, 24 races in Formula One? Have there been any where he's looked like the best of the rest? Has there been any where he's looked like he will actually be able to pick up points for the team in a meaningful manner? I don't think so. Whereas Alex Albon, you could argue, last year in particular, it was sort of, every other weekend we were looking at, especially post-Canada, we were looking at Alex Albon and going, yeah, he'll be on the periphery, one of the better drivers on the grid this weekend. Even when he finished 11th, 12th place, it was like, yeah, he's knocking on the door. You can understand Alex Albon's positioning here. And then when there were weekends where it didn't happen, he was still able to put in good performances and sort of finish ahead of Logan Sargeant the majority of the time. Who's your pick to reach Q3 apart from the top 5 teams? Has to be Nico Hülkenberg, doesn't it? Has to be Nico Hülkenberg. He has been so quick in that car recently. Shall we move over to qualifying then? The AI radio messages coming in, but cars getting out on track at this moment in time. Got Bottas and Joe coming out of the garages. We've got Alex Albon, talk of the devil, is leading the pack at the front there, coming around the final corner. And will be starting his first flying lap. We've then got the Alpines behind, the Hasses behind as well. So you've got Ocon and Gasly, Hülkenberg and Magnussen. Then a bit of a gap, to be fair, to Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu in the state cars, coming around turn 8 at this moment in time. Max Verstappen comes out on track. Sergio Perez joins him. Lance Stroll is going to be the first Aston Martin to join the battle. But I think we're going to have to wait a little while to see the true pace of some of these cars. Because, as Alex Albon has just mentioned, it's going to take a little while for this track to rubber in a touch. It's always the case with Australia, just because, as I said, it is a park the 99% of the year. So it takes a little while for the circuit to really rubber in and sort of clean up. Because Alex Albon, lots of leaves on the track. Got to catch a flight in 3 hours. Cool. Jeez. Oh, that is punchy. I accidentally put 2 tea bags in it because I was doing it in the dark. But it's there. Here we are then. Alex Albon, as I said, the man getting us underway with qualifying. Setting the standard at a 118.7. Esteban Ocon, hopefully, with another lap coming soon. 126. Yeah, Gasly and Ocon going for 2 warm-up laps there, clearly. Otherwise, that is absolutely horrendous. Kevin Magnussen going quickest in his Haas car. Nico Hülkenberg just behind. The Haas probably will be quite good in qualifying here. has been very good in qualifying over the first couple of weekends. So no reason why the Haas wouldn't be good in qualifying here. Ooh, Alex Albon, track time deleted. Oosh. Track limits infringement for Alex Albon. Alex Albon needs to put in a good performance. There's so much pressure on him now. Obviously, having taken the car from Logan Sargent. Bottas and Joe slot in 3rd and 4th place. But Max Verstappen is the man we're really looking at. And there it is, a 117.4. Alex Albon, yeah, turn 9, completely off the track there. Understandably, deleted lap time. Charles Leclerc is just starting his flying lap as well. Lando Norris coming across the line behind. So we're going to start to see the pace being set. Remember, we're not going to see the big boys really go for it at this point. Because, ooh, Charles Leclerc asking for a darker visor. Sun in his eyes. That was actually an interesting thing that popped up. Basically, they moved this Grand Prix earlier on in the day because last year when they had the red flags, multiple, it got to the point where the sun was very low during the Grand Prix and the drivers were really struggling to actually see, even with the tinted visors. So we're now looking at an earlier Australian Grand Prix so that if there is a red flag, the sun won't be as low. But Charles Leclerc already struggling with the sun, so we'll see how that affects the Ferrari's time. Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso also going for a second build-up lap. Interesting that we're seeing these guys going for a second build-up lap. Maybe just showing again the track not quite warming up the tyres in the way that they want to. Max Verstappen struggling with a little bit of understeer here, but the Ferraris, well, if the sun is in Charles Leclerc's eyes, it's not affecting his pace. Jumps right up to the top of the timing sheets, a 117.2 and a 117.2 also from Carlos Sainz. So there are the Ferraris jumping to the top of the timing sheets. Very, very quick indeed from them. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri also file in 5th and 6th. There's a little bit 2x2 in the top 8 right now with the Hasses amongst it. We're still yet to see Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricardo. Of course, only 19 drivers taking part, so a little bit of a gap at the bottom there. Good day, Coast Club. Down under. Is that a good day just because we're in Australia, or are you Australian? Always interesting to know where people are from. We had a little discussion about it earlier on. Various mix of ethnicities in the chat. My Sky stream is like a minute behind. That's interesting. Ooh. Oh, that is so close to Esteban Ocon, isn't it? Ooh. Oh, no, he does. He touches it. Touches it. Esteban Ocon. Ouch. Way too far to the left-hand side. Coming through the final corner. That is a bit of a bump there. Is there any damage to the Alpine? Whew, looks like he got away with it, did Esteban Ocon, but ooh. You are Australian. That makes perfect sense. Naples. Ooh, okay. In Florida. Love that. Texas. Watching from Sydney, Australia. So this is what I mean. I feel like I miss out on a lot of the Australian fans watching live a lot of the time. Just because usually the races are at absolutely horrendous times. Hong Kong. Race at finally a decent time. I mean, we've got the Chinese Grand Prix coming up. A couple of weekends. Got Japan first and then China round 5. Zhou Guangyu's first ever home Grand Prix. Wow. So we're still looking... Well, we're looking for a bottom 4 in this qualifying session. I should point out, usually a bottom 5, obviously, but with Logan Sargent not taking part, Gonna be Logan Sargent. Well, it's just going to be a did not start for this Grand Prix weekend, but that's effectively 20th place taken. And therefore, we're looking at 4 drivers who are going to drop out in this qualifying 1 session. Lewis Hamilton on a flying lap, as well as George Russell also. Russell up into 13th place. We're looking at Hamilton, Tsunoda, and Ricardo all finishing up. Hamilton comes across the line. Goes 5th fastest at the time, although I think my stream is behind. So on the live time, it's 8th fastest already. Sergio Perez up into 2nd place. Ooh, Norris into the top 3. Pretty decent lap, although I feel like there's going to be a lot of shuffling. Fernando Alonso, hello. Fernando Alonso going quickly and goes fastest. Wow. Was not expecting Aston Martin to be up in the mix this weekend, but Fernando Alonso, a 116.9, the first driver to get into the 116s. And goes to the top of the timing sheets. Take a bow. Fernando Alonso. Woo. At the minute, we've got Zhou Guanyu, George Russell, and the 2 Alpines bottom of the pack. I was expecting this to be a little bit better of a weekend for the Alpines, if I'm honest. But not the case. Gasly was so quick here last year until he kind of ruined it in the red flag restart. But only 18th at this moment in time for the Frenchman. Ocon behind after his little tangle with the wall. But has continued on. Zhou Guanyu, the stake, out of qualifying at this moment in time. And George Russell, 17th place as well. Still time for those 4 to improve. Alex Albon is teetering on the edge. Would be quite embarrassing if Alex Albon doesn't make it through after taking Logan Sargent's chassis and effectively being told you are the faster driver. And there's a good opportunity for you this weekend. Carlos Sainz goes quickest of anybody, a 116.7 from the Spaniard. So a few drivers knocking up into the 116s now. The car's getting that little bit better grip as these tyres bed in. You can see the racing line starting to come to fruition. You can normally tell when the track's sort of rubbered in fully because you do just get a very dark racing line in the middle of the track. Whereas at the moment you can still see areas of the track where it's just a little bit green. Tyres need to scrub a touch more before that grip really comes into play. Charles Leclerc goes 2nd fastest of anybody. Fernando Alonso still in the 116s with them. So 3 drivers into the 116s so far. We're seeing a lot of drivers dropping back in, getting that final change of tyres. Will Fernando Alonso come back out again? Does he need to, you know? Is he feeling safe with a 116.9? I feel like he probably will be safe with a 116.9, to be honest with you. He's what, a second and a 10th or 2 ahead of the drop at this moment in time. Are we going to see, 5-10 drivers manage to find an entire second? I'm not so sure. George Russell's on his flying lap, though. Is going to come across the line, goes 9th fastest, gets himself out of that bottom 4, and Alex Albon drops into it. George Russell, though, having a real torrid time with his brakes at this moment in time. Yeah, George Russell's middle sector, not really the best time that we've seen so far. Alonso's the Dark Lord. Oof. for the sake of the championship and everything, I really hope Ferrari can take the pole today. Maybe even 1-2. Coming from a Max fan. I mean, this is definitely a solid opportunity. Already the Ferrari's looking fastest. Max Verstappen struggling a little bit with his oversteer coming into the corners. 4th place at this moment in time for the Dutchman. Sergio Perez just behind him 5th. So we'll see what Verstappen can do. Is out on track at this moment in time. Perez about to come across the line. Start a flying lap. So we'll see what he can do. Oh no, Perez coming across the line and finishing a flying lap. Goes 2nd fastest. So it is going to be close, it looks like, between the Ferraris and the Red Bulls here. What's the name of the track behind me? That is Singapore on the wall. Here we go then. Esteban Ocon trying to escape from the bottom 4. Doesn't. Alex Albon doesn't. Oh no, does. Goes 5th fastest. Does indeed. Get himself out. I was looking at his sector time, not his actual lap time there. Stunning lap from Alex Albon up into the top 5 and then drops into the top 6 as Max Verstappen also goes quicker. But going very quickly in the Williams, Alex Albon. That drops Nico Hülkenberg into the bottom 4. We are going to see quite a few laps come in, though. We've still got a couple of minutes left in this session. Max Verstappen with a really quick first sector as well. Goes fastest in that first sector. Amazing. Ooh. That's a great lap from Alex Albon now. Just looking back on it. Albon ahead of Verstappen just for a moment, but yes. Is he going to be able to get another lap in? Does feel like this is kind of those drivers setting their standard and saying, this is the lap that I've got. 2 minutes left on the board. Hülkenberg's just come across the line, so starting his flying lap. Kevin Magnussen as well, just behind his teammate. Daniel Ricardo coming across the line and will be starting his first. Ooh, Gasly failing to follow race director's instructions. Ooh. Gasly crossed the white line as he exited the pit lane. Ooh. That is not what you want to see if you're an Alpine fan. Finally looking like a car might be able to sneak through in qualifying. And Gasly's trying to pick up penalties all of a sudden. Goodness me. Hello, Claire. How you doing? Lovely to see you in the chat. Williams made the right choice. I mean, yes. They did. They did. It makes sense. You put your fastest driver on the track in your car. If you only had... if the argument is, right, if Williams only had one car, let's say the Sport randomly... Formula One decide, you know what, we don't want to be a team sport anymore. We're only going to allow 10 cars on the track, right? And Formula One decided to just sack off half their drivers. Alex Albon's the one keeping his seat. If Williams had one seat, Alex Albon would be their driver. Ooh. Max Verstappen still struggling with the front end of his car. 1:16.8 from Verstappen. Just a 10th off Carlos Sainz's fastest time. A 10th quicker than Charles Leclerc in this one as well. If you're an Alpine fan, do those exist? They do exist. They're mainly just French people, right? But, I mean, it's a French team with 2 French drivers. They do exist. I'm a Gasly fan. So I feel like I have a little bit of a soft spot for Alpine. Just because I want Gasly to do well. Did the stream just crash? No, that's just you. Just you, I'm afraid. Can't see any dropped frames on my end. But coming towards the end of it, Daniel Ricciardo gets himself out of that bottom 4. So it's Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Gasly, and Zhou. And oh, Zhou Guanyu with a little bit of damage to his car. So that's why Zhou Guanyu couldn't put together the lap time that he wanted. Picked up some damage on his front wing, front left side of the wing. Where on earth did that damage come from for Zhou Guanyu? Even Zhou doesn't know. Where did I pick up that damage, he says on the radio. Oh, and Daniel Ricciardo's lap time deleted. Turn 5 track limits. So that's Daniel Ricciardo dropping back into the bottom 4. And Gasly joining as well. So Gasly in there. Hulkenberg, who has been so good in qualifying recently, Nico Hulkenberg. And was really quick in Australia last year as well, dropping down into that bottom 4. So Hulkenberg, Gasly, Ricardo, and Zhou, the 4 drivers to drop out of qualifying. Daniel Ricciardo once again massively outperformed by Yuki Tsunoda, and I made a video about this. I'm really worried about Daniel Ricciardo and his position in that AlphaTauri car. I wonder if Danny Rick would be a good announcer for Australian TV next year. Whoa. Jay Cooper sending Daniel Ricciardo packing already. Zhou Guanyu. Yeah, really hefty amount of damage on the front wing of the state car. Would have definitely cost him a good chunk of time. It makes sense that he's 0.3 off even getting through, but he doesn't even know where he picked up the damage. We haven't seen a replay of it either as of yet. But yeah, really worried about Daniel Ricciardo, mainly just because he just still can't get to grips with these new style Formula 1 cars. Just doesn't use the front end of the car in the way that you'd hope. And just looks really unstable, does Daniel Ricciardo, a lot of the time in the AlphaTauri. I know he did really well at that Silverstone tyre test. And I got a lot of comments on that video saying, Daniel Ricciardo, the reason that he's there, you know, he did so well at the Silverstone tyre test that he's like... But that was, you know, a tyre test. That was, what, 10 laps that he did? And... okay, he was, you know, nearing Max Verstappen's pace in that 10 laps, but still, there's not a lot of stuff to go off of. But we have now got 5 Grand Prix at the end of last year to go off of, and 2 Grand Prix at the beginning of this year to go off of. Daniel Ricciardo's not looking great. And, you know, a lot of people saying I'm bitter because he didn't work out a McLaren. Maybe a little bit, but there we are. Yuki's also just looking amazing. I've noticed this about Yuki. Yuki starts the year phenomenal. I don't know whether it's just the AlphaTauri car / now RB car. I don't know whether they've got a little bit of the Haas about them in that they start the year a lot more competitive than they kind of end the year. Although that wasn't the case last year, but that was because of big upgrades. Yuki Tsunoda always seems to start quite well. I remember saying that in 2022 as well. Because 2022, there was a lot of talk around Yuki Tsunoda and whether or not he deserved that AlphaTauri seat, especially because Pierre Gasly was putting together some really, really good performances. Especially 2021 Pierre Gasly was great. Had an exceptional year, did the Frenchman. And yeah, then Yuki Tsunoda started 2022 really well, and it sort of fell off a little bit towards the end. And then last year, 2023, I remember looking at Yuki Tsunoda's sort of first 5-6 races, I want to say up until around Monaco. But even Monaco was good until the weather changed and he made a mistake. So Yuki Tsunoda, kind of first half of last year, was really quick. So I'm just keeping an eye on Yuki Tsunoda, because it's been a couple of years now where he's been really quick for the first 5 to sort of 8 races. And then it's kind of ebbed away a little bit. Like even last year, if you think back to Spain, where he had that really good battle, with Zhou Guanyu. Came out on the wrong side of it. Zhou Guanyu ended up being the driver to pick up the points, but was still right there in and amongst the point scoring positions in Spain last year. Was Yuki Tsunoda. So it's just one to keep an eye on. You know, as much as I can talk about the negativity around Daniel Ricciardo, I feel like there is also a little bit of a keep an eye on Yuki Tsunoda. Maybe just starts seasons really well. One of those drivers that comes back off the winter break, looks absolutely rapid, and then as the season progresses a little, maybe just drops off a touch, does Yuki. We'll have to wait and see. It's not looking good for Daniel Ricciardo. Hasn't for a while. I mean, hasn't since Renault, really. Let's face it. I feel like Daniel Ricciardo was leaving Renault a mistake. Leaving Red Bull was definitely a mistake, but was leaving Renault a mistake? Difficult to argue, isn't it? Because, you know, the Alpine since has been very 50-50. And Laurent Mekies there. Mekies or Mekies? Never 100% sure. Ex-Ferrari, now head of RB. And just talking about the fact that Yuki Tsunoda needs to be in the mix for the points. They want to be topping that kind of back of the pack 5. My prediction is that they keep Ricardo. Oh, if this keeps up, sorry. Yeah, Ricardo gets sacked for Lawson. Yuki stays another year, goes to Aston Martin in 2025. Yeah, I can understand that. I think Liam Lawson definitely deserves a seat. I could also see a Liam Lawson at Williams. I'm going to be honest with you. I could see Liam Lawson at Williams if Kimi Antonelli isn't quite ready for that step up into Formula 1 yet. Because I don't think you want to rush Kimi Antonelli. I know that I've seen a lot of people saying, well, Kimi Antonelli straight into the Mercedes seat. God, no. God, no. Give him some time, bless him. Could get binned off halfway through the season if he keeps this up. I think less likely. Although Liam Lawson is kind of that ready-made replacement, isn't he? So I think that's the problem as well. That injury, Daniel Ricciardo's injury, has kind of put Liam Lawson in a position where actually he's gone. I think I mentioned this in the video that I did, but Liam Lawson before the summer break, if you mentioned Liam Lawson to people, they'd be like, oh yeah, he's in DTM or he's in Super Formula. He's all right, isn't he? You know, pretty decent. Maybe on the fringe of a Formula 1 seat sometime. Like, I think most people's thought Liam Lawson would never actually end up in Formula 1. But after putting in those 5 performances and Daniel Ricciardo being injured, suddenly Liam Lawson's like one of the first names that people mention. You're like, oh, okay, who needs to come into Formula 1? Or if XYZ retires, if X moves, who would you want to put in the car? And lots of people now say Liam Lawson. Like, Liam Lawson's done so well to put himself in and amongst that discussion. Kimi should replace Ocon? As in Kimi Antonelli or Kimi Räikkönen? Ocon could go to Sauber. I've seen that Sauber-Ocon link by a few people as well. I was debating, doing the whole predicting the 2025 Formula 1 grid, because I had written a script, obviously. Everyone does, sort of pre-season, everyone writes their 2025 driver lineup predictions. But then Lewis Hamilton decided to throw a spanner in the works and move to Ferrari, and then I didn't get the opportunity to change the script quickly enough, because I still work full-time, which is a real shame. But didn't get the opportunity to change the script and re-record the video, because I'd already recorded it and started editing it. Then Hamilton decided to move to Ferrari, so I didn't get the opportunity to re-record it. So I'm maybe thinking about doing that video, the kind of predicting the 2025 grid in the next few weeks, just because we've got quite a few gaps between like Australia and Japan, China. It's kind of a few weekends in there. Liam Lawson is also pretty entertaining. Yeah, that's very true. He's good good character to have on the Formula One grid, as well as being very, very quick. Like, you have to hand it to him. Very, very quick guy. Antonelli, Behrman, even in F2, given Behrman's Formula One performance. It does feel, I was talking to Taron about this, just the fact that Antonelli probably will be on the Formula One grid sometime soon. Behrman should be. Lawson should be. Théo Pourchaire feels like a real miss if nobody picks him up at some point. Feels like one of those kind of lost talents. And who was the other one? Jack Doohan as well. Jack Doohan feels like a bit of a miss. Should probably get a Formula One seat at some point or another, but might not end up with one. There's sort of 4 or 5 drivers that I'm interested to see if they could get themselves on the Formula One grid, how they would do, but looking unlikely for a few of them at this point. Ollie Behrman definitely though needs a seat in Haas in my opinion next year. Hamilton at Ferrari is very interesting prospect. Could go either way. I feel like he's definitely upgrading at this point, right? Carlos Sainz, unfortunate, but you can understand why Ferrari want to make that decision. Anyway, should we talk about qualifying? Because it is underway. Just sidetracked a little bit for the first 5 minutes of this Q2 session. But we're in it. 10 minutes left to go. Max Verstappen has set the fastest lap time so far. Oscar Piastri in second place. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari, still up there. This is what I mean. I feel like the McLarens will come to life and will be a little bit more competitive than they have been. So Piastri up in second, Norris in fifth, Sergio Perez in sixth. I could see that being our top 6 this weekend, if I'm honest. Lewis Hamilton in 7th, George Russell a little bit out of position, you could argue, in 12th place, but looking like he's going for a second warm-up lap because a 1:30 is not where the Mercedes is. Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso up there, top 10 again. You're expecting, the Aston Martins to be there. You've kind of almost got the top 10 as expected, though Alex Albon, currently the man who's in the top 10 and proving why the Williams team decided to get him there. Vips? No. No. Unfortunately for Vips, he threw away his Formula One career. Because you got to remember, Vips was ahead of Lawson in the kind of Red Bull pecking order. Because Vips, a lot of the time, was lined up to do the Red Bull rookie driver free practice sessions. And then that was swiftly changed to Liam Lawson after, the infamous clip that Astro has mentioned there. Or Atro, sorry. Atrox. Please don't bring Seb back. Let the man rest. I feel like, we kind of need those drivers to move on. Like I was quite happy to see the back of like Kimi Räikkönen, for instance. I was quite happy to see Seb leave. Like in hindsight, it's not great when one of the greatest Formula One drivers we've seen decides to leave the grid, but was he ever going to move back up towards the top end of the grid? Not really. I just feel like those kind of drivers coming towards the end of their career, it makes sense for teams to eventually try and move on from them. Really late here in Mexico. Very early here in the UK. So 50-50. What's my full-time job? I'm a teacher, believe it or not. So unfortunately, been very busy with a little bit of an exam period and therefore less content coming out than I'd like. But we'll get there. We'll get back to a bit more of a routine and rhythm with it. Still trying to get out at least a video a week, but I'd like to be able to get 2 videos out a week, really. Just because I have so many ideas and I see people do videos and I'm like, that was literally on my to-do list and now I'm just going to have to take that off because he got to it first. Valp, thank you for subscribing. Appreciate that, mate. Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso just creeping into the top 10. Top 10, no surprises there at the moment. The 5 teams you'd expect. Alex Albon closest in the Williams. A 1:17.3 currently. Yuki Tsunoda 12th place. Kevin Magnussen, Bottas and Ocon. Remember, we are just looking for those bottom 5 at this moment in time. And the bottom 5 drivers will drop out in Q2. Then we'll head in to the pole position shootout for top 10. Red Bull is like Man City, turning it into a farmers league. I mean, yeah, but Liverpool, Arsenal doing well this season. Maybe Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes can get in and amongst it. You've got to live in hope that there will be weekends where the Red Bull isn't as dominant as it has been over the course of 2023. 2024 is looking like the rest of the teams will close the gap. It's just whether or not they can close the gap to the point where they're really battling consistently with Red Bull. I think that's unlikely. But weekends like this, where Carlos Sainz is absolutely rattling around, maybe we can see Ferrari pick up a victory. What teams do you think will be heavily reliant on rookies like Williams and McLaren last year? I don't think any team is necessarily reliant on rookies in that sense. I think if your team is in a position where you can take a rookie, it's probably optimal. Like, I don't think a lot of teams want to hold on to aging drivers that are sort of nearing the end of their career. You know, like Haas, for instance. I feel like if you offered them a young rookie that they could build around and it was like a guarantee for the next 5 years, they would snap your hand off, right? Like, they'd get rid of an aging Kevin Magnussen or an aging Nico Hulkenberg. It's just there hasn't been that rookie until Ollie Behrman has kind of clicked into it recently and made himself sort of put himself in a position where he needs to almost be looked at for one of those seats. So I feel like it's the rookies themselves that have to kind of put themselves right at the forefront. I feel like the only one for me is Teo Pourchaire. Should be in that Sauber seat, in my opinion. Bottas, you can get rid of. Joe, I feel like you get rid of Bottas over Joe, to be honest, at this point in time. But then saying that, Bottas is currently still in qualified. Joe Guanyu isn't. So Albon, Tsunoda, Magnussen, Bottas, Ocon still that bottom 5 at this moment in time. We have still got 4 minutes on the clock, and you can see Charles Leclerc out on track, about to come across the line. Ocon and Alonso behind. Lance Stroll too. Albon is back out once again. 21 years ago, Alonso started from pole for the first time in his career. Goodness me, on this day. 21 years. Whew. Goodness gracious. Fernando Alonso is just inevitable, isn't it? It's just like Fernando Alonso will never stop being good enough for Formula One. Someone is going to have to literally rip him out of the Formula One car. I see so many people like saying, oh, he'll retire 2025, he'll retire 2026. I don't know if he will, you know. I feel like Alonso's just going to keep on going until his body literally gives up. Racing and just being competitive is his life. I was, was it Drive to Survive? I can't remember if it was Drive to Survive or like an interview that I saw somewhere or another. But Alex Albon was talking about playing paddle with like Lando Norris and George Russell and those guys who kind of live in Monaco. Fernando Alonso was there playing paddle, and Lando Norris got partnered with Fernando for paddle, and Fernando Alonso was like the most competitive man on the earth. like some of the drivers, you know, they're taking it semi-seriously. They're sort of back and forth a little bit between paddle. No, Fernando Alonso wanted to win. You just can't. He's just so competitive about everything that he can possibly do. So a winner in every single respect is Fernando Alonso. And I just feel like, yeah, someone's gonna have to literally drag him out of the Formula One car. I just don't think he'll give it up. I know he sort of had a couple of years off the grid way back when, but I think that couple of years made him respect the position that he's in even more so and sort of treasure his place amongst the Formula One grid even more. And now it's going to be even harder to actually get him out of a car. Let's have a little look then. Albon, a 117.1. And in the pits at this moment in time. So, oh no, he's out on track. Alex Albon. Or is he? No, not out on track. I saw Alonso and thought it was Albon. So, Albon looking like 11th is going to be the best that he can get. But we have got Tsunoda on an outlap, Bottas on an outlap, Kevin Magnussen coming around turn 11 and 12 as well. Esteban Ocon currently coming through the middle sector, so it's not done and dusted as of yet. Are you muted in the chat? You are not, Nate. You are not. Lewis Hamilton going for it in the Mercedes, although going for it looks like maybe 7th place is going to be the best that you can get in the Mercedes car. Let's have a little look then. Fernando Alonso is going to come across the line in the Aston Martin. Does he improve a touch? Goes into the top 6. Does Fernando Alonso. Bottas across the line. Can't improve enough to get himself through. George Russell across the line. Goes 8th fastest. Ocon across the line. Nope, not there either. Yuki Tsunoda. Oh, Yuki Tsunoda, hello. Goes 8th fastest and has dropped Lance Stroll out of it. Lance Stroll then comes across the line and drops Lewis Hamilton out of the top 10. George Russell's already come across the line. George Russell might be under a little bit of pressure here. Lando Norris across the line, stays 7th fastest. Oscar Piastri and Lewis Hamilton, you can see, are right there. Kevin Magnussen also coming around the final sector. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Oscar Piastri actually goes into the pits, is happy. I mean, he is 4th fastest at this moment in time as Oscar. You can understand that. Lewis Hamilton. No, Hamilton wasn't on a flying lap. Wasn't on a flying lap. I thought he was. But no, it was not Hamilton coming across the line on a flying lap. It was Hamilton done and dusted. That is Hamilton out of Q2. And he is the man that makes way for Yuki Tsunoda. Woo! Hamilton 11th, Albon 12th, Valtteri Bottas 13th, Kevin Magnussen 14th, and Esteban Ocon 15th place. They are your 5 drivers out in Q2. They join Nico Hülkenberg, Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo, and Zhou Guanyu in the bottom 9 this weekend. Of course, Logan Sargent not taking part for Williams. Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda. I love Yuki, man. I just love Yuki. I feel like I am a little bit biased when it comes to Yuki Tsunoda, but my goodness me, look at that lap from Yuki Tsunoda. Displaces a Mercedes from the top 10. If I was Lewis, I'd take a year off. Go do something else for a year. I mean, I feel like Lewis Hamilton still wants to do well for Mercedes. It just feels like the Mercedes team and the car just is not there. But Yuki Tsunoda, oh. Again, see, people say this, Yuki Tsunoda in contention for the Red Bull seat. I just don't think he is. And it's really harsh on Yuki. I feel like Yuki Tsunoda could do absolutely anything and he still wouldn't be in contention for that Red Bull seat. It's just such a shame that Yuki Tsunoda isn't really there, in my opinion. But is what it is. Want Danny to do good? Well, Danny Ricciardo down in 18th place. Yuki Tsunoda bumping up into the top 10. And a Q3 performance from the Japanese driver. Points possibly in contention for tomorrow. And it's looking ever worse for Daniel Ricciardo. I said in the video that I made a couple of days ago on this sort of Daniel Ricciardo situation that it's getting to the point where how long how long is he realistically talked about as that second Red Bull driver? You know what I mean? Like, end of last year, when Sergio Perez was having an absolute shocker, Daniel Ricciardo was guaranteed that second Red Bull seat. It was like, oh yeah, Daniel Ricciardo comes into Red Bull 2025 as long as he has a semi-decent season this year. He's not having a semi-decent season so far. Who has surprised me the most with practice and qualifying so far? I mean, you got to point out Yuki Tsunoda in the top 10. I feel like Alex Albon has justified the decision just about there for Williams to kind of make that swap. If Alex Albon had been like 19th, you'd have been like, maybe don't do that, and would have kind of caused a bit of a contentious issue within the Williams team. But I think the fact that he's qualified in 12th place, would Logan Sargent even have knocked on the door of 12th place? Probably not. So Alex Albon's kind of justified that there. Is on the periphery of points. Needs a couple of people to have a bit of a dodgy weekend. Okay, fair enough. But I feel like Alex Albon's in the best position he probably could have been in. Other than Yuki Tsunoda just putting an absolute stunner of a lap there and getting into Q3. So you can understand kind of where Williams were at this point. Just having a little look at the onboard with Lewis Hamilton. Already loses loads of time through the first couple of corners, does Lewis Hamilton. It was a lap that was already falling apart. Ooh! And then, yeah, down towards turn 3. Gets out of shape. Basically, Lewis Hamilton threw away that lap within the first sector. It was done and dusted for him. And 11th place was the best that he could do. George Russell just sneaking through ahead of his teammate. Not even a 10th between the two Mercedes drivers. But then you look at the fact that Lewis Hamilton is 7/10 off the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. Like, it is not close right now. Red Bull and Ferrari are clear of the Mercedes car by a considerable margin. Even the McLaren, you would argue at this point, is clear of the Mercedes car on those tracks where it's going to suit the McLaren that little bit. It's going to be a tough year for Mercedes at this point. A lot still to do with that car and a lot of upgrades to come. They've already talked about upgrades coming. When is it that we go to? I can't remember when the first European race is now. We've got Canada. We've got... I know Imola, isn't there? There's Imola 7th round of the season. I feel like there's going to be some big upgrades coming in Imola for that Mercedes car before we then go to Canada, don't we? So, waiting for the Astons. Pretty decent from Fernando Alonso. 6th place. Quicker than Lando Norris, which I was not expecting. Lando Norris really looking... There's again, Lando Norris not looking like the driver that we saw last year as of yet. And Oscar Piastri has come into this season swinging. Like, Oscar Piastri finished in 4th place in Saudi Arabia. It's a hell of a finish. And the reason he finished in 4th place, obviously, you can blame the strategy in Saudi Arabia for Lando Norris. But the reason that Oscar Piastri got the better strategy is because he was the front-running McLaren car, right? He started ahead of Lando Norris. He qualified higher than Lando Norris. So it was justified that Oscar got himself the better strategy. And Oscar, yeah, looking very solid in that McLaren car. Charles Leclerc win? Maybe. Max Verstappen struggling a little bit. I always feel like the race pace of the Red Bull is just so dominant, though. I feel like Verstappen, as long as Verstappen qualifies in the top 5, he should be pretty fine, to be honest. Mercedes is becoming Chelsea. I love that we're, linking every single Formula 1 team to a football team. I love that. There's only 10 teams though, is the problem. I feel like you should try and do every driver is a team. Know what I mean? Like, it feels like Charles Leclerc, you could maybe separate out from Carlos Sainz, and you could do them as two separate teams. Like, Oscar Piastri, to me, feels like Aston Villa. You know what I mean? Whereas Lando Norris doesn't feel very Aston Villa. Haas isn't going to score points this weekend? No. Yeah, looking unlikely. Looking like RB with Yuki Tsunoda's kind of, well, clearly the closest to scoring points at this point in time. But Alex Albon right there. Valtteri Bottas teetering on 13th. Could maybe sneak a point. But again, you're looking at the only reason Nico Hulkenberg picked up a point was because Lance Stroll smashed into the wall. So unfortunately, you need one of those sort of top 10 drivers to have a dodgy weekend, effectively. And then you may be looking at a point scoring place. But having said that, we are getting into Q3. Carlos Sainz out on track. George Russell out on track too. Fernando Alonso is going to be third across the line. Charles Leclerc fourth. Yuki Tsunoda and Oscar Piastri come out side by side. I'm not sure they'll want to continue being side by side for the entire lap, but they're going through turn 4 and turn 5 together. Maybe this is a little bit of a strategy from Oscar Piastri to sit behind Yuki Tsunoda and learn what Yuki Tsunoda is doing. 50 likes on the stream. Thank you, Harish, for being the 50th like. Can we get to 100 likes by the end of the stream? That's the goal we kind of try and set ourselves. These qualifying streams usually do a little bit worse, obviously, than the racing streams, but the racing streams are a lot longer. So can you get it to 100? Leave a like, subscribe if you're new. Over 300 people in the chat right now. So worth dropping a like if you are enjoying the content. Oscar Piastri and Yuki Tsunoda still side by side as they come through the final sector. Max Verstappen is going to be across the line next. Lando Norris, Sergio Perez, and Carlos Sainz is on that flying lap. Alpine is the entire MLS. It's an interesting take. No, it feels like more Haas would be the MLS, right? American Link. People go there to retire. Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg. But here we are. Carlos Sainz then is going to set the standard in this qualifying session. Coming around turn 12 and 13. And down towards the final corner. Sergio Perez giving him a little bit of a tow as well. Down towards turn 1 and the start-finish line. And Carlos Sainz puts in a 116.3 to get us going. George Russell next across the line, a 116.8. There you go again. There is the difference between the Ferraris and Mercedes this weekend. 5/10 the gap already between the two. Fernando Alonso comes into the pits. So possibly a little bit of a thrown away lap from Fernando Alonso there. Charles Leclerc comes across the line, a 10th of his teammate. So Charles Leclerc, a 116.4. The Spaniard still holding on to provisional pole. Yuki Tsunoda and Oscar Piastri coming around the final corner together. Yuki Tsunoda goes 4th fastest, as you'd expect, a 2nd off the pace though. Oscar Piastri displaces and goes 3rd place. George Russell dropping down to 4th now. Max Verstappen, though, is the man to keep an eye on. Verstappen very quick through the first sector, comes across the line and does go quickest. A 116 dead. So 2.5 quicker than Carlos Sainz is Max Verstappen. Lando Norris goes quicker than his teammate. Jumps up into 4th place, 5/10 off the pace. Sergio Perez, 4/10 off his teammate, though. Creates a bit of a Red Bull sandwich with Ferrari as the filling. And Alonso and Stroll are not out setting fast times. Alonso dropped out and went back into the pits. A little bit of a thrown away lap from Fernando Alonso there. But there is our provisional top 10. Verstappen quickest. Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari will start beside him. Charles Leclerc 3rd. Sergio Perez 4th on the 2nd row of the grid. The two McLarens together on the 3rd row. George Russell and Yuki Tsunoda on the 4th row. And the two Aston Martins on the 5th as it is. But we will have to see. Am I making any update video about the Red Bull internal drama? I'll be honest, I haven't made any videos on that because I feel like it is a situation that we need to understand a little bit better. Like, I can understand people making videos about it, but I think we also have to understand that there are a lot of people that are affected by this in not just, you know, oh yeah, there is Fernando Alonso going off the track. Lost the car in turn 6. Nearly did an Alex Albon. Did Fernando Alonso. Lost it in turn 6. Goes across the gravel. Oh, and that is going to be... they're going to have to check the underside of that Aston Martin car. That is a lot of gravel that is going to be in the bodywork of that Aston Martin. Thanks to Fernando Alonso. But yeah, I'm not going to make a video on the Red Bull situation until it is fully cleared. So until we understand every single aspect, we know how the internal investigation was done, who it was done by, what actually happened. Until we have full clarity, I'm not going to even touch it because there's too many people that are affected. There are too many people involved where it's not a sporting thing. Like, I follow Formula One for the sports side of stuff. I much prefer to look at on-track matters than off-track matters. And I just feel like, yeah, you can't make a video about it where you're talking about things with bits of information. I don't understand making a video about it when you don't have the full picture. And that's just my opinion on it. There's too many people that it affects for me to make a coherent video about it. Alonso using the power of memes and rookie jokes. What do I think the reason Daniel Ricciardo is struggling? He just hasn't adapted to this Red Bull car or RB car. Hasn't adapted to this RB car, if I'm honest with you. If you look at his onboards, he really struggles to actually keep hold of the front end of the car through the corners. Just not quite able to really get it where it needs to be. Can't adapt to the car? I mean, yeah, basically. Can't adapt to the car. Whoa, London is red has done it. Verstappen, City, Perez, United, Sainz, Liverpool, Leclerc, Spurs. Yeah, maybe. Because he never wins nothing. What you never win nothing. That's Arsenal fan TV, isn't it? Hamilton, Chelsea, Russell, Newcastle, Alonso, Brighton, Stroll, Burnley. Love it, yeah. Enjoyed it. Lando, Arsenal. Yeah, can understand that. Anyway, 3.5 minutes left to go in this qualifying session. As it stands, Max Verstappen will be on pole position for the Australian Grand Prix. God, it's still early here, isn't it? I need to wake up. Carlos Sainz, second place. Charles Leclerc, third at this moment in time. Sergio Perez making it... Is it a Ferrari sandwich or a Red Bull sandwich? I guess it's a Ferrari sandwich, isn't it? Because the ham in a ham sandwich is in the middle. So it's a Ferrari sandwich because the Ferrari is there in the middle of the Red Bulls. Norris and Piastri just behind. Piastri, of course, his home Grand Prix. Russell, Tsunoda, 7th and 8th. George Russell and Lance Stroll coming around the final corner will be the guys to set the standard. Fernando Alonso out as well. Verstappen and Perez are out on track. Carlos Sainz, interestingly, behind the Red Bulls. So we're going to see the Ferraris come across the line after the Red Bulls. Same with Piastri and Norris. They will also come across the line afterwards. And Yuki Tsunoda, coming out of the pit, is going to be last across the line of anybody. So Yuki Tsunoda is going to be the final car to get us through this qualifying session. 2 minutes on the clock. A lot of drivers coming around. George Russell and Lance Stroll on their flying laps. Lance Stroll, of course, yet to set a time. Oh no, Lance Stroll has set a time. 1:17.2. Snuck through and did that. Didn't even see it happen. Fernando Alonso yet set a time because made that mistake in turn 6. Verstappen starting his flying lap. Sergio Perez coming across the line behind him as well will also start his flying lap. Atrox, thank you so much for subscribing. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button too. We are live for every single qualifying and race throughout the entire season, and sprint race. Sprint race is coming up in China, the first sprint race of the season. Oh, and that Aston Martin just bobbling around. Not sure that Fernando Alonso is looking 100% planted. Here is George Russell then coming across the line. Is it any improvement from him, or is it another build-up lap? Oh, Carlos Sainz. Going slow. Don't know whether he was just maybe building a gap or if he made a little error there, Carlos Sainz, but was going a little bit slow. But Sainz is going to be behind the Red Bulls. Let's see then. Verstappen across the line. 159 from Verstappen. Oh, mama. That is going to be interesting to try and beat. Sergio Perez, a 116.2. Carlos Sainz comes across the line, goes second fastest, a 116.1 from the Ferrari. Oscar Piastri is next in the queue, goes quicker than his teammate, a 116.5. But Lando Norris right behind. Is he going to be able to improve? Takes that position back, goes fourth fastest overall. Does Lando Norris 4/10 off the pace? George Russell comes across the line and is seventh fastest for George Russell. Not going to improve in the Mercedes car. Charles Leclerc then is coming towards the start-finish line. And it looks like into the pits. Charles Leclerc isn't going to improve on his time. Maybe a little mistake in there from the Monegasque man. Didn't see it. Lance Stroll, eighth fastest still. Yuki Tsunoda across the line. Can he go quicker? Yes! Yuki Tsunoda up into 8th place and ahead of the Aston Martins. Fernando Alonso is going to be the final man across the line and stays 10th fastest. Was not a very clean lap from Fernando Alonso at all. And really struggling in the Aston Martin, to be honest, in that final qualifying session was Fernando Alonso. But there is your top 10, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute heater of a lap from Max Verstappen. Goes top of the timing sheets once again in 2024. Then Carlos Sainz just behind in second place. The appendix is out. Carlos Sainz is in to second place. Sergio Perez in third. Lando Norris will start in 4th place beside him. Charles Leclerc, a little bit out of position there, you'd argue, in the Ferrari in 5th place. Expecting more from Charles Leclerc, but as Josic is saying in the chat, maybe a little bit of a bottle from Charles Leclerc. Just a little error from the Monegasque. Oscar Piastri in 6th place. I feel like can move forwards there in the McLaren. We'll be looking at those cars ahead. It's going to be difficult, but we'll have a little look at the Red Bulls and Ferraris in front and think maybe he can get in and amongst it. George Russell, probably the best that he could possibly do in that Mercedes car. 7th fastest overall. Yuki Tsunoda needs to take a bow. Displaces Lewis Hamilton in the top 10, you would argue, and into 8th place in the RB. A whole 10 positions ahead of Daniel Ricardo. Lance Stroll in 9th place with Fernando Alonso qualifying behind the Canadian in 10th. Will be the point scoring places going into tomorrow. Outside of the points, Lewis Hamilton starts in 11th place with Alex Albon beside him in the Williams, justifying Williams's position to put Alex Albon in the car ahead of Logan Sargent. Oh, and there was the mistake from Charles Leclerc, and that's why he didn't finish the lap. It was the penultimate corner for Charles Leclerc. Well, penultimate to penultimate. The third from last corner. Charles Leclerc. Oh, just understeers. Just understeers. Loses the rear end of the Ferrari car, and that's what cost Charles Leclerc an opportunity to really go for it in that final lap. But where were we? Alex Albon starts in 12th place. Valtteri Bottas in 13th with Kevin Magnussen 14th. Esteban Ocon was rounding out Q2 in 15th place. Nico Hulkenberg just dropped out in Q1 in 16th place. Pierre Gasly and Daniel Ricardo will start behind in 17th and 18th place. And Zhou Guanyu starts at the back of the pack in 19th. Of course, Logan Sargent not taking part this weekend for Williams. But that is our top 20 drivers, 19 for this weekend. We will have to wait and see tomorrow how it plays out overall. Told you about Leclerc being Spurs. I mean, yeah, you weren't too far off. Kimi, smooth operation indeed for Carlos Sainz. Puts himself right back in it. And does make you wonder what Carlos Sainz would have been able to do in Saudi Arabia last weekend. Carlos looking incredibly quick in the Ferrari. Picked up a podium, obviously, in Bahrain. Missed out in Saudi Arabia, but back at it is the Spaniard. Alonso got out-qualified by Stroll. Alonso, I think it was that mistake in turn 6 on his first flying lap. Just put him in a little bit of a weird situation and then just couldn't quite hook it up in the second qualifying lap either. Little bit of a mistake maybe from Alonso, but I think he'll be able to get in front of Lance Stroll tomorrow come the race. Starts right beside him, of course. The two best Formula 1 drivers qualified P10 and P11. Maybe back in the day, the best two. But I feel like they've been displaced a little bit. Tsunoda deserves Verstappen's seat. That is the kind of hype that we need around Yuki Tsunoda. Absolute mental shout from Brando there. Yuki Tsunoda going up into Red Bull. But a very, very solid drive from Yuki Tsunoda. Driver of the qualifying session probably has to be Yuki, to be honest. Absolutely sensational to get up into the top 10 and then not even get it, ahead of the Aston Martin